Excluded from my twin brother's executive summit, I vanished into the desert. When the company collapsed, my whole family and business partners desperately tried to reach me. You ever have one of those moments where you don't even get mad at first, just numb? That's how it felt when I opened the memo. It wasn't a phone call, not even a face-to-face conversation, just a cold, one-paragraph email sent at 6:07 a.m., titled, Executive Realignment Notice. I'm Ethan, by the way, 39, living in Seattle, and co-founder, at least I thought, of a tech firm my twin brother Declan and I started 11 years ago. Now, apparently, I'm not even invited to the executive summit. The email said, due to necessary restructuring and in the interest of optimizing leadership dynamics, your participation in the Q2 executive summit has been deferred. We appreciate your continued service. Deferred. Like I was a goddamn invoice. I stared at the screen, rereading that word like it might change. I didn't reply. Just leaned back in my chair and tried to swallow the familiar, bitter taste rising in my throat. I thought about the time Declan was in legal trouble back in 2016, when that ex-employee claimed harassment and tried to take him down with a baseless lawsuit. I was the one who cleaned it up. The time he got too drunk at a company retreat and spilled numbers to a potential investor, I smoothed it over. When his girlfriend trashed his condo and took his dog, I was the one who picked up the pieces. Every single time Declan stumbled, I covered for him. And now he sends a damn memo? I called our dad. I don't know why. I guess some dumb part of me still thought he might back me up. He answered on the third ring. Ethan, he said, voice gravelly with that usual gruffness. Everything all right? I just got cut from the executive summit, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Declan sent a memo. There was a pause. Then a sigh. It's just a meeting, son. Don't make this into something it's not. Right? Because it's always just a meeting. Just a joke. Just a misunderstanding. I didn't say anything after that. Just hung up, calmly. Too calmly. By the afternoon, the numbness had curdled into something sharp and quiet and cold. I booked a cabin out in the Mojave. No Wi-Fi, no cell towers. Just sun, silence, and the sound of my own breathing. I didn't tell anyone. I packed light, one bag, 2 books, and a notebook I hadn't touched in years. Declan could have his summit. He could sip mineral water and talk in circles with whatever sycophant still believed he was a visionary. I was done playing support beam in someone else's empire. By nightfall, I was on the road, headed into the desert. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't care who noticed I was gone. The farther I got from the city, the lighter I felt. By the time I hit the Mojave outskirts, my phone had already dropped to 1 bar. Another 20 miles, and it gave up completely, no signal, no distractions, just the hum of tires on cracked asphalt and the occasional vulture gliding overhead like it had somewhere better to be. The cabin was exactly what the listing promised, solar-powered, no frills, and planted in the middle of nowhere. 1 main room, a cot, a tin roof, and a porch with 2 chairs. Nothing else for miles except sand, cactus, and jagged red rock. I stood out front, watching the horizon turn from dusty pink to burnt orange. Then I snapped a photo, just the cabin, the desert, and the kind of stillness you can't fake. I posted it with 1 line. When the boardroom cuts you, the mountains call. Didn't tag anyone. Didn't explain. Then I turned the phone back off and tossed it on the cot like it was radioactive. That night, I ate a sad little can of beans by lantern light and wrote for the first time in years. Not emails, not bullet points, just thoughts. Stuff I hadn't let myself say aloud. I wrote about Declan, about the summit, about Dad brushing it off like it didn't matter, about how I'd spent over a decade putting out fires no one even remembered I'd put out. When I turned my phone on again the next morning, mostly to check the weather, the post had blown up. Former employees, college friends, people I hadn't spoken to in years were leaving comments. Damn, power move. Honestly? Mood. Icon behavior. Even Julie from HR, who used to always look terrified of me, wrote, some fires are meant to burn. Proud of you, Ethan. I didn't reply to anyone. Just scrolled, heart pounding in a weird, unfamiliar way. Validation? Guilt? Relief? Then a text popped up. Dad, don't make this personal. Like clockwork. Still nothing from Declan. I turned the phone back off. Every morning after that started the same, coffee made with a camping kettle, a hike into the rocks, and an hour of journaling in silence. The air out here didn't just feel cleaner. It felt like I could breathe for the first time without someone else waiting for me to fix something. No one asked me for notes. No one interrupted. No one looked to me to make the plan. I was just a guy alone in the desert, finally existing on his own terms. And that felt more like power than any summit ever had. By the 5th day, the desert didn't feel like an escape anymore. It felt like mine. I woke early, made tea with lemon balm I'd picked up from the lodge shop, and hiked a narrow canyon trail that twisted between walls of redstone. Eventually, I reached a mineral spring tucked beneath a cliffside. Warm, quiet, half hidden from the world. I stripped down and sank into the water, letting the heat unknot every muscle I didn't know was tense. For the first time in forever, I didn't feel like a man trying to get somewhere. I was already there. I sat in that canyon bath, legs stretched out, steam rising into the morning air, and thought about how long I'd been running deadlines, growth projections, fundraising rounds, crisis PR meetings. Always building, always fixing. For who? When I got back to the cabin, I turned my phone on, not because I needed to, but because I was curious. The notifications exploded again. Someone had screenshotted my Mountains Call post and shared it on LinkedIn of all places. One of my ex-co-founders, someone I hadn't spoken to since he got quietly pushed out, had written, "Sometimes leadership means walking away. Respect." Another tagged me. Ethan Carr's post is the most honest thing I've seen from a tech exec in years. Apparently, it had even gotten picked up by a small startup blog as a viral act of executive boundary setting. I laughed. Not bitter, not sarcastic, just real laughter. Loud and stupid and alone in the middle of nowhere. The messages kept coming. A few passive-aggressive ones, too. One from a former investor. "Hope you're enjoying the break, but don't forget people are watching." One from a marketing guy Declan had hired 6 months ago. "Didn't realize this was a PR stunt. Classy." Then Dad, again. "Call us. This is serious." Still nothing from Declan. Good. I brewed more tea and sat on the porch with my notebook. On a whim, I took another picture, just my bare feet propped on the railing, the desert stretching out endlessly ahead, and posted it with the caption, "The only restructure I need is inner peace." An hour later, it had twice the engagement of the first post. I set the phone down and didn't touch it again for the rest of the day. That afternoon, I climbed up a rock outcropping, high enough to see the sun blaze across the full horizon. I meditated poorly, clumsily, but I did it. I sat cross-legged, eyes closed, breathing deep. I wasn't thinking about the company, or Declan, or Dad, or the memo. I was thinking about nothing. And for once, nothing felt perfect. That night, I wrote. They thought they cut me out, but all they really did was set me free. I closed the notebook. No anger, no edge, just truth. It happened during a twilight hike. The sun was dipping low behind the hills, painting the desert in layers of deep gold and rust. I was walking slow, letting the last of the heat fade off my skin, when my phone, buried in the side pocket of my pack, buzzed. Then again, and again, like a swarm. I stopped, pulled it out. 13 texts in 2 minutes. The first one was from Vance, my cousin and junior partner back at the company. "Dude, you have no idea what's happening right now." Then, "It's bad. Like, biblical." Another from one of our engineers. "Did you really know this was going to happen?" A notification popped up, new headline from Tech Memo Weekly. Merger meltdown. Valorsoft exec summit ends in chaos after surprise deal leak. I blinked. Read it twice. The merger Declan had been floating for months. The one I had warned him wasn't ready apparently got announced at the summit. Without vetting. Without proper legal review. Without consensus from the board. Investors freaked. 2 of them walked out on the spot. One of our biggest clients pulled a contract that same day. There was shouting, someone fainted, and the hotel staff had to call security. I stood there in the cooling desert wind, reading update after update. One message from Vance stood out. "Declan's in hiding. No one knows where he went. Dad's blaming you." Of course he was. Of course. Dad's voice rang in my memory like an echo. "It's just a meeting. Don't make this into something it's not." Right. I looked up at the stars, already pricking through the sky, and leaned back against a rock. They wanted to cut me out of the room. Fine. Turns out the room couldn't stand without me. I let the wind move through me, slow and dry and honest. No smugness. No glee. Just a thought I didn't expect. Good. Let them feel the absence. Let them sit in the hole they made when they tried to erase me from my own company. I slid the phone back into my pack and kept walking. Each step forward felt quieter, freer. The stars didn't care who was in the boardroom. And neither did I. 3 days passed after the summit imploded. I didn't check my email. Didn't open my calendar. Just watched the sunrise, made coffee on a tiny propane stove, and walked barefoot across the cool desert sand. It was almost peaceful, until the message came. No subject line. Just a short text from Declan, finally. "Can we talk? I need you." No apology. No context. Just that, like nothing had happened. Like we were still on speaking terms. Like I wasn't the twin brother he'd exiled with a corporate memo. I read the message twice. Then again. I thought about everything, how I bailed him out of his DUI in college. How I sold my first house to cover payroll when he blew our Series A budget. How I spent years making sure he never looked weak in front of the board, even when he was drowning in self-inflicted chaos. And this was what it always came back to, Declan needing me. Not choosing me. Not respecting me. Just needing me. I stared at that message for a long time, then typed a single line in reply. "Sorry, I'm too busy enjoying my restructuring." Then I blocked him. Blocked Dad too. No more cryptic texts. No more guilt disguised as concern. I stepped outside, let the wind hit my face, and took the trail behind the cabin. No destination, just walking. The desert was quiet. Not the fake quiet you get in a boardroom before someone lies to you, real quiet. Honest, untouched, unapologetic. Somewhere around mile 3, the weight in my chest, years of pressure I didn't even know I'd been carrying, finally lifted. Declan wouldn't call again. Not really. Not when he couldn't pull me back into orbit. And I wouldn't go back. I kept walking, not tracking the time, just letting the sun shift behind me. Eventually, I paused on a ridge and looked out over the vast, empty land. For once, I felt like the silence didn't need to be filled. I let it sit. And I kept walking. The voice memo came late at night, right as I was settling into a folding chair outside the cabin with a small glass of mezcal and nothing on my mind but the wind. Vance again. I hadn't heard from him in a day or two, which usually meant things had either stabilized or gotten way worse. I pressed play. His voice crackled through, laced with disbelief and just the right amount of sarcasm. Okay, so I waited to send this until I had the full story. And dude, you're not gonna believe it. I smiled. He continued. The summit? Full collapse. Full Titanic energy. One of the angel investors called it a coordinated embarrassment. Apparently, half the board didn't even know Declan was going to announce the merger. The pitch deck was unfinished. Like, literally slides missing. There was a short pause, then Vance's voice dropped to a more serious tone. I heard Dad tried to smooth things over. You know, blame it on the advisors, or the timing, or some crap like that. But get this, someone in the room asked, where's Ethan? Wasn't this his area? And you could have heard a pin drop. I closed my eyes and leaned back, feeling the dry air wrap around me like a blanket. Here's the kicker, Vance said, his voice turning almost reverent. Dad told him you were taking time off. And someone, I think Rhonda from compliance, goes, maybe he's the only one who saw this coming. Then Declan got up and left the room. Just walked out. Didn't come back. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Then Vance added, oh, and you'll love this. Dad apparently told someone. Ethan was the glue. The glue left, and everything fell apart. His words. Dead serious. I laughed. Not bitter this time. Just surprised. Honest laughter. The kind that starts small and ends with you wiping your eyes, wondering how long you've been waiting to hear someone say it. I took another sip of mezcal and let the flavor linger. The glue, I repeated out loud, to no one. I looked out at the horizon, soft and dark and infinite. For so long, I thought being the glue meant I was needed. That without me, the whole thing would fall apart. Turns out I was right. But now that it had, I didn't feel regret. I felt free. The desert had a way of making everyone feel sacred. Not loud. Not gloating. Just right. I was back on the overlook where I'd watched my first sunset here, sipping black coffee from a dented tin mug, when the message came in from Vance. No, hey, are you there? Just a screenshot and a sentence. Even the board threw him under the bus. I tapped the image. It was a clipped section of the board's official meeting minutes. Someone must have leaked it. The collapse of the Q2 summit is attributed to internal miscommunication, poor strategic timing, and executive instability in key leadership channels. Executive instability. That was code for Declan. I chuckled, quiet and steady. Not spiteful. Just satisfied. Then the follow-up text came in. Vance. Also, dinner at Grandma's last night was nuclear. She straight up told Declan, this is what happens when you discard loyalty. I stared at the message. Then I read it again. That was our grandmother. The same woman who used to side-eye me for skipping Christmas Eve Mass. Who once told me that, Ethan, you're too emotional to lead. And now? She had publicly called out Declan at her own dinner table. It must have landed like a brick. I imagined it. The plate's still warm. Declan trying to smile through mashed potatoes while Grandma, calm as ever, dropped a truth bomb that made the whole room go dead quiet. No one argues with Grandma. Not when she's in sermon mode. Another buzz. Vance. Your dad didn't even defend him. Just kept chewing. I nearly dropped my mug laughing. For a moment, I just sat there, letting it all settle. The sun slid down behind a line of rock, casting everything in that soft, golden hush. I raised the mug and whispered to no one in particular, here's to discarded loyalty. Then I stood up and walked to the edge of the cliff. No speech. No audience. Just a man watching the sky pull its final trick of color for the day. And damn if it didn't feel like the most beautiful kind of justice. Quiet. Inevitable. Cosmic. The morning started like the others. Sunlight through thin curtains, warm coffee, absolute peace. But peace doesn't last when your past keeps knocking. I just returned from a morning hike, boots dusted in sand, when my phone lit up. I ignored the first couple dings. Then more came through. A wave of messages. Familiar names. Familiar tone. First from Dad. We're planning a reconciliation dinner. Come home. Then Declan. Let's rebuild. We can still fix this, Ethan. We just need to talk. And finally, from a number I didn't recognize, some local PR agent we'd used once during a funding crisis. Heard you're trending again. We'd love to help you craft a narrative. Executive detachment. When founders walk away to lead better. Think about it. Media's already half there. I didn't respond to any of them. I just sat there on the cabin porch, barefoot, sipping my second cup of coffee, and letting the absurdity wash over me. They still didn't get it. They still thought this was about one summit, one memo, one viral post. They thought if they said the right buzzword, reconciliation, rebuild, rebrand, that I'd just slide back into the old Ethan. The fixer. The brother who absorbed everyone's panic like a sponge and turned it into strategy. Even now, with the company spiraling and their credibility in question, they were still treating me like a resource. A lever. A piece of machinery they could switch back on. I rolled my eyes. Then I opened my booking app and extended my cabin stay by another week. The screen gave a soft ding of confirmation. I exhaled like I hadn't breathed in 10 years. One more week off the grid. Let them scramble. I pulled out my phone and sent a single message. Not to Declan. Not to Dad. To Vance. Me. Tell them I've restructured my priorities. 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. Then reappeared. Vance. You just made my entire day. I smiled. Later that afternoon, I hiked out to the boulder I'd started calling the throne. A flat-top stone just high enough to feel like a lookout. I lay back on it and stared at the sky until the sun turned everything to gold. In their minds, I was having a tantrum. A retreat. A dramatic phase. But I wasn't retreating. I was realigning. Not with them. With myself. They wanted me back. But not to understand me. Just to use me again. This time, the answer was simple. No, I wasn't coming home. Because I already was. The last morning in the desert felt different. No buzz of messages. No weight on my chest. No need to brace myself for whatever fresh disaster was waiting back in the real world. Just silence. The kind that settles into your bones, makes itself at home, and says, you're allowed to stop running now. I stepped outside barefoot, still in the same worn hoodie I'd thrown on most mornings. The air was cool, the sky pale blue and wide open. A single Joshua tree stood in the distance, its limbs reaching toward nothing and everything at once. I held my coffee in both hands and just stood there, watching steam curl upward into the stillness. Inside, the last page of my journal waited. I'd been writing every day since I got here, some days full pages, some just a sentence or two. But today felt like a closing chapter. A final line. I sat at the little wood table, opened the cover, and wrote. Not rejected. Released. That was it. They hadn't cut me out of something I belonged to. They had freed me from something I'd been holding together long after it stopped holding me. I snapped one last photo from the porch. Coffee mug in the frame, sun just rising behind that stubborn old tree, casting long shadows across the sand. I added a caption. 0 regrets. Restructured and reborn. Posted it. Then turned off the phone. Not airplane mode. Not silent. Off. Done. I didn't need to see if they responded. Didn't need to know who still didn't understand. This part of the story wasn't about them anymore. I stepped off the porch and into the sand. It was cool under my feet, soft and uneven. I didn't put my shoes on. Just kept walking, slow and steady, toward the ridgeline where the sun was waiting. No plan. No destination. Just forward. For years, I've been the guy with the answers. The one with the plan, the pitch, the pivot. No, I didn't need to know what came next. Because I wasn't building a comeback. I was building a life. One that didn't revolve around being the fixer. Or the glue. Or the fallback. Just a man. Walking barefoot through the desert. Free.